A central part of video games is combat. Whether you're killing computer-controlled zombies in Left 4 Dead or doing PvP in Dota, combat can be both exhilarating and fun. Now, what makes something fun can be a hard thing to grasp. I recently came across a great article by Mike Burkhead which tries to break this down. So according to Mike, player actions in combat is made up of 3 steps. First step is to form a goal. You then choose an intention, which means how you want to achieve this goal. And last, you generate the sequence of actions needed to realize the intention. So let's say your goal is to kill your opponent. Your intention could then be to use your sword to kill him. And the action sequence could be to pull out your sword, walk up to your opponent and hit attack a bunch of times. Now this example might seem obvious, and if all combat in a game played out using these exact steps, it would quickly become repetitive and boring. So what you can do to make this more interesting is provide the player with multiple valid intentions. If the player has multiple ways of solving a problem and reaching a goal, they will start to feel that the game has more depth. But providing the player with more options is not enough in itself. Just filling up your games with empty mechanics will make it feel bloated and tedious. Now this is where constraints come in. Constraints are used to strategically limit the amount of valid intentions a player has in a given situation. In other words, we are making different intentions more likely of success based on 3 types of constraints: the goal, the environment, and the opponent. Let's have a look at an example where these constraints play in. So if you ever played World of Warcraft, you probably know that the Warlock class used to be provided with a large number of spells. In general, these could be split up into 2 major intentions. You could choose to focus on the damage over time spells, or you could focus on the direct damage spells. What intention gave the best outcome completely depended on the constraints. If you were facing a warrior, the best way to avoid dying was to keep a good distance. Here you could use the instacast damage over time spells while running away and making sure to stay out of melee range. Eventually the warrior would run out of health and you could start spamming an insult of your choosing. If you were facing a mage on the other hand, you had to use a completely different tactic, which meant changing your intention. Here the damage over time spells weren't nearly as effective because the mage had the ability to remove them. Instead, it was more effective to burst him down using the heavy hitting direct damage spells. This is a good example of where the type of opponent you're dealing with changes the intention. But there are other factors that play a big role in what intention to choose. Say we're suddenly facing a warrior while standing above him on a ledge. Now we're dealing with an environmental context. Here you could freely cast your direct damage spells without any fear of the warrior getting close. And while the mage isn't bothered by you standing on a ledge, environment still plays a big role here. Because the warlock has a lot of instant cast abilities, it makes it easy to pop out, use a bunch of abilities and go back to hiding. This makes it really hard for a mage to hit you in terrain with many obstacles because he has to worry about line of sight on his slow casting abilities. Now that got a bit technical, but I think it's a great example of how you have to consider both your opponent and the environment in order to choose the correct strategy. What's great about combat that takes this into consideration is that it rewards experienced players because of their ability to make calculated decisions. Of course, when you add this type of complexity to a game, it can be hard for new players to get started, because they simply don't have the knowledge of all the classes and abilities that go into choosing the right intention. I consider this both a weakness and a strength of many modern day games. Especially games like Dota or League of Legends are known for being notoriously hard to learn. This can make it extremely frustrating for new players trying to learn the game, but also really rewarding for the more experienced players. But we also see newer games that go in the opposite direction. Instead of providing depth by adding more opponent types and abilities, these games make combat interesting by focusing on the goal or environment. A good example of this is Rocket League. Of course, the overall goal is simple. You want to score as many goals on your opponent as possible without them scoring on you. But depending on the placement of the players in the environment, your goal and intentions change drastically. Are any of your allies close to you? What is the placement of your opponents? Where are you in relation to the ball? These are just a few examples of questions you need to ask about the environment before you can decide on a goal and how to accomplish it. But Rocket League also uses a particular element really well. I'm talking about urgency. Because the game is so centered around being at the right place at the right time, speed becomes very important. Some goals might not be very urgent, like getting in position for a good defense and allow you to pick up boost along the way. Though a lot of the time situations are very urgent. So if you're racing to get in position to convert a good pass into scoring a goal. So with this in mind, we also have to take in considerations like what speed is the ball traveling at and in what direction? And do you have enough boost to make it in time? In general, shooters take good use of the environment to add constraints. If you think your opponent is waiting for you around a corner, you might decide to throw a flashbang before running out and shooting him. If you know a sniper is lying in wait, you probably want to stay away from open areas and stay largely hidden behind cover. I find that analyzing games in this way can really help narrow down what's important when designing combat for games within a particular genre. It's definitely something that I'll keep in mind next time I'm laying out a level or adding a new ability to one of my own games. So I hope this video gave you some ideas on how you can make combat fun in your games. Feel free to share your own ideas on the subject in the comments. Of course, this video is a bit unusual in that it focuses on game design instead of the more technical side. Definitely let me know if you like this format and if there's anything I could do to improve it. On that, thanks for watching and I will see you in the next video. Thanks to all of the awesome Patreon supporters who donated in September, and a special thanks to Judeman, Hans Hoftun, Zed Jabali, Superman the Great, James P, Jesper Mikkelsen, Thomas Worley, Cyborg Mummy, Jason Latito, Derek Keemskirk, Faisal Marify, Nick Lang, Husam Kazar, Aaron, Robert Bund, and Peter Locke. If your name's not on the list, I'll make sure to include you later this month and the next month as well.